Hello, and thank you for tuning into the Stuff I Heard podcast. I'm your host, Joshua Peak, and this is a solo podcast today. I have a lot going on today, and I thought I would just crank one out for you guys and for myself. Let's face it, this is more self care and more for me than it is probably for you guys. Um, Listen, for me personally, listening to podcasts help keep me awake and interested and sort of distracted from the tasks that I have to do. Um, Lately, I've been having to do a lot of tasks, a lot of it having to do with work, a lot of it having to do with the fact that we are still under COVID and still having people getting paid to sit at home. And so they're choosing not to work. And so it is causing an enormous strain upon everybody who is working. Um, I do want to talk about that for a second. There is a trend going on right now where you've got maybe, let's just say for round numbers, 20 people showing up to work to do the work of 50 people, and 30, that 30 that's not there, is basically sitting at the house going, cool, I'm getting paid by the government to sit here. This is way better than that crap I was doing at work. Meanwhile, the 20 that show up are working themselves to death. And I am one of those 20 in that ratio scenario of this world that I'm talking about. Um, I am, I don't know the math, but I did 53 hours in 4 days this week. What does that average out to? I don't even know. A lot of hours, a lot of hours. And everybody's doing that. Everybody who shows up to work anywhere is doing that. Um, it is a stressful time. Everybody is being stressed. And honestly, it's the people that keep showing up that keep me showing up because of the fact of there is a commonality and a camaraderie that goes with that when you know that you can rely on certain people. And I mean, ultimately, if I'm given the choice, I would rather be the person that shows up than the person that sits at home. I sat at home for 6 months with an injury. I was not happy. Um, I like doing things. As much as it strains me and stresses me to be the person that's always thrown into the worst possible scenario, I'm the person you want in the worst possible scenario because I'm going to figure out a way to make it right. And I do on a regular basis. Now, this is a kind of an inquiry or a social commentary, I guess you'd say, on the idea of if you're that kind of person, how do you regulate? How do you find your own self care? How do you find your own pattern? Do you just knuckle down and say, well, this is what I'm going to go through every day because this is what I'm built for, kind of like I do? Or do you go, all right, I'm just going to do this long enough for me to get to the next thing where I can get off? Now, I can tell you that in the past, I've always thought in my brain, you can get through this a little longer. Now, what I mean is, like, when I joined the Marine Corps, I was faced with enormous tasks of things that I'd never dealt with before, a lot of physical tasks that I'd never dealt with before. I thought that was in pretty good shape, but also not in top shape. And so little things like going for a 3 mile run was suddenly very taxing on me because I had never been a runner. I had to become a runner. Like when you go through the Marine Corps training, they tell you know yourself and seek self improvement. You're only as strong as your weakest link. Okay, well, within myself, my weakest link is my run time. So I had to make my run not a weakness anymore. So I fought really hard and I pushed myself every day to do the thing I really hated so that it would no longer be a weakness, so that I'd no longer be a detriment to the people around me. And every task that I had, I would face that way. Now, granted, most people aren't wired that way. I get that. That's why most people don't join the Marine Corps. But that's not necessarily just from the service. That's from who I am genetically, who I was brought up to be, you know, what is the nature versus nurture thing? That's both for me. And I'm curious if there is an actual quotient or status or statistician out there that's like, oh yeah, this percentage of people are just normally this way. Um, for whatever it's worth, I am drawn to those people. It's like catnip for me. I'm like, oh yeah, these are my people, for better or worse, what it is. So, what do you do? How do you regulate? How do you keep it going? How do you find the thing that's like, this is what I'm doing it for. In the Marine Corps, whenever I was faced with a tremendous physical task, I would go, this will end at some point. Like I would have in my brain, this will end at some point. And I kept saying to myself over and over again, even in the gas chamber when I'm panicking for breath and I'm feel like I'm going to die because I'm literally fluid is going directions it's not supposed to go. In my brain, I kept going, this will pass soon. I went in Paris Island during the winter and we had to low crawl in icy water. And I thought, this is the thing you got to get through it. Going for runs, every time my brain would go, I don't want to do this, I want to quit. I would go, get through it. That's all you got to do is get through it. And so life has been sort of a get through it mentality for quite a while. When I was working for a beverage company, we'll put it that way, I found a way to leave. I found a better job. And I knew all I had to do was get through whatever the time period is. You just tell yourself, all right, I got to get through the next 2 weeks. I put in my 2 weeks notice. I got to get through the next 2 weeks. Okay, I've got 2 more days. Oh, this is a really sucky day. I got 2 more days. Just 2 more days to get through it. But life is sort of a compromise with yourself of always telling yourself, I just got to get through this next thing. And of course, thinking about it that way sort of makes me think about Adam Sandler's movie Click, where in the movie, if you guys haven't seen it, he goes to Bed Bath and Beyond and he's super tired and super overwhelmed. And he runs into Christopher Walken, who's this crazy character who's like, welcome to Bed Bath and Beyond. What can I get you? And he's like, I need more time. I need time. And he gives him this special remote that lets him then access parts of his life, and he can fast forward things, he can rewind things, he can replay things. And at a certain point, he's using this power to kind of help him get over some tasks. So whenever he thinks he's bored, he fast forwards a task, and then he doesn't even remember doing it, but he does it. So he's sort of just going through the motions. And whenever he has like some huge job to do and he's looking forward to when the job's done, he's like, hey, I got this remote. Let me just hit fast forward and I can go through it and then it's done. I don't have to worry about it. It's all done. The problem is he does that so much in his life that pretty soon his entire life has gone by and he's realized he's at the end of his life and he's missed it. He's missed all of it. And I think that me and people like me are subject to be in that pattern to where all you're doing is basically just trying to keep up with what you have to do. And if you're not careful, you're going to miss all those little moments in life that make life precious. You're going to miss those moments where you go, let's take time and talk to each other and look in each other's eyes and experience the natural beauty around us. And, you know, remember to sing, remember to dance, remember to enjoy some things. And so for me personally, doing this podcast and sharing this time with you, the listener, this is my version of that. This is a version of that. This is me telling you what I like, what I'm into, what I'm listening to. Stuff I heard is what the podcast is called. I'm really trying to let you guys in a little bit on what is me. So, in that, maybe there's some commonality with you, the listener. Maybe you are listening right now and you're like, hey, I kind of feel that way too, or I like that show too, or I've listened to that podcast too, and yeah, that does touch a nerve, and maybe it does. Maybe that's why after what is this episode 314? After 314 episodes, some of you are like, yeah, this is for whatever it is. This is my dude. I'm happy I'm your dude. So stick around, and I'll keep being your dude. All right. So switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about something a little lighter. I listened to Joe Rogan interview Quentin Tarantino. Again, I really am not a fan of the way Spotify does their content because it's very difficult to actually watch or consume it. Since I had gotten so used to watching on YouTube or listening to it on the regular podcast app, I don't listen to Joe as much. It's just harder now. But I made a special effort for this because I saw that he had interviewed him. He put it out on Twitter, or whoever does his Twitter feed put it out on Twitter. And I was like, oh, I like Quentin Tarantino. I love Pulp Fiction. Um, Such a crazy story movie, you know, really interesting plot lines and different things of patterns woven with stories that you're like, what is going on? And then when you finally figure out what's going on, you're like, whoa, this is really strange and weird, and I can't stop watching. Um, he's a very strange and weird guy, but also he is a fan of things. And that's the main thing I got from listening to this podcast with him and Joe Rogan. Um, is he talks about, working in a movie rental place and, having ideas for movies that had gotten kind of crazy cool for a while, but then had sort of gotten nerfed down, and where the good guy always wins or the good guy always makes it. And he's like, there was a time during the 70s where the good guy didn't always make it. Sometimes at the end, he'd be like, "Well, this is it. I'm dead now." Yeah, I mean, it would end on a down note sometimes. And he was like, "I kind of missed movies like that. I missed the crazy adventures where dangerous things would happen with dangerous people." And he's like, "Those are sort of the people that I looked at as the stories that needed to be told." And so he had this idea for a script for Reservoir Dogs, and he wrote this script and shopped it around, and people were interested. But Miramax ultimately was the one that signed off on it, Harvey Weinstein. Um, and he talks on Joe's podcast about his work relationship with Harvey Weinstein and how, he saw some of the stuff that was going on. And it was one of those things where people would talk about it, people tried to help when they could, but they were all like scared to really interact or interfere. And he's like, I have remorse over that. I have remorse over the fact that this guy was my friend, and I didn't stop him. I didn't intervene, and I should have. And I should have been more involved with that. But he's like, I'm not really here to talk about that. I kind of want to talk about the business part of it and how Harvey and I did some projects together that actually turned out really good. But a lot of it was Harvey, coming to him and saying, this scene that you've got in this story, we can't, like, if we put this on the air, we're going to alienate half the audience. They're just going to walk out. And he was like, Quentin sort of took a stand for himself and said, no, this is the art I believe in, and this is the thing that's going to make the movie the movie. And if we don't have the scene in there, then I need to shop this around with somebody else. And at a certain point, Harvey, being a savvy businessman, said, okay, well, we'll include it. And if it does badly, then we're going to say it was your call. And if it does well, we're going to say it was Miramax's call. And he's like, okay, whatever. It was his first movie. He figured, why not? We'll just take a chance. And they took a chance. And Reservoir Dogs was hugely popular. And it struck a nerve with a lot of people. A lot of audience latched onto it. Was like, oh, who is this? Who is this director? Who is this writer? Who's this guy, Quentin Tarantino? And then Pulp Fiction came out, and holy crap, you talk about capturing the world. Um, I remember the first time I watched Pulp Fiction. I was actually in the Marine Corps when I watched it, and I was blown away. And since then, it's become one of my favorite movies to watch with the captions on because I love the verbiage. I know that Quentin is a very verbal guy. Inglorious Bastard starts off with basically a monologue of 15 minutes of this guy just talking and talking and talking. And that's sort of the way his brain works. Is he like, I want to give you some information about all of the crazy things that I'm thinking and feeling, but also in a character that you may not see it in. It goes right into my little fun house of, liking Frankenstein's monster and the thing that's not supposed to be caring and loving and honorable actually being all of those things. Or maybe you got somebody who's supposed to be the good guy who's actually the bad guy. All of the contradictory things that you see in life. I like the fact that he mirrors those in some characters. You know, you're not supposed to care about all of the gangsters in the Pulp Fiction show, but you do. I mean, there's some crazy violent stuff that happens, and all along the way, you're like, "Yeah, I get it." Like, I'm kind of rooting for you. You know what I mean? To me, this all started years ago with a lot of different movies and genres, but like right now, I'm going back and I'm watching The Sopranos on HBO. Not every night, but most nights I'm watching one episode a night just to try to catch up. I didn't watch them through when this was popular. I didn't watch them when they were on the air all the time. Now I'm going back and I'm watching them, and it's really good writing, and it's really good acting, and it's really good storylines. There's a lot of good things happening in this that you can see how the goal all along was we're going to show you the bad guy, and we're going to make him be the hero of the story. You're going to root for this guy, even though he's a bad guy, even though he does horrible things, even though all this stuff is happening to him. We're going to show you this guy who's supposed to be this mob boss who maybe is the boss at work, but actually has no control at his own home. Like things are out of control. His wife and his kids run the house. They tell him what to do. He's stressed out beyond belief, and he faints, and he has to go see a doctor about his stress level. And his doctor prescribes him medication, and he's meeting with regular sessions, and he's worried that if the mob guys that he's in with find out about it, that they're going to see it as a sign of weakness, and they're going to try and take him out. And they do at a certain point, and it's crazy, and it's a crazy story. We just finished season 2 and started season 3, and you know, the idea for the show is really interesting. But to me, that's one of the first villains that you're introduced to, that you're seeing as the main character, and basically the character that you're sympathizing with and falling for. And like, why is his mom got to be so rude? And why is his kid disrespecting him as much as he's doing for them? And why is his wife being so horrible? And then you see him do horrible things, and you're like, oh, that's why they're doing that. Oh, okay. That's why they're mad at him. That's why they're. But you're also like sympathetic for him, and you're like, what? God, what a life. It's just a crazy life that you're watching this guy go through. And, it's a great story. So, hats off to the Sopranos people. I know that I'm late to the game, and other people are like, it took you this long to catch up? Yes, it took me this long to catch up. Listen, sometimes you get busy, okay? All right. So I do want to talk about a couple things. I'm going to geek out for a second about Bad Batch. The latest episode came out today. I think it's episode 10 of the Bad Batch. In this episode, spoiler if you guys haven't watched it, skip this part. But in this episode, basically the guys get called on a mission to try to settle their debts with Sid, and they have to go help a separatist leader. Now, for those who don't know anything about Star Wars, which is kind of hard to imagine nowadays, but I get it. Listen, I worked with somebody yesterday that was 28 years old, and they had no idea what Star Wars was really about or anything. So, anyway, in the prequels, you learn that this Darth Sidious has sort of plotted against two different divisions against each other, the Separatists and the Republic. And the Separatists are all these people who are just trying to make money and trying to live, and they've hired a bunch of people to build droids, and droids fight their armies for them. That way they don't actually come into harm's way. So they got these droids fighting this army for the Separatists. And then you got the Republic, who seems like they're more politicians than anything. But the Republic is who we're introduced to in the prequel as being supposedly the good guys, even though they're being led secretly by Darth Sidious, which is Senator Palpatine. And you learn all this later. He later becomes the Emperor. Bad guy, bad guy, bad guy. Okay. So the Republic supposedly has this clone army being built that's DNA from Jango Fett. The clone army are the stormtroopers. They're the people you see walking around, and they're all, in the beginning, they're fighting with the Republic to try and destroy the Separatists. Okay. So this battle's going on. Okay. They're constantly at odds. You got, on the Separatist side, you got what looks like Sith Lords and the dark side of the Force working with the Separatists. And you got the light side supposedly working with the Republic, all designed by Darth Sidious to do this. And at a certain point, the Emperor takes over as the Emperor, and not Darth Sidious and not Palpatine, but he takes over, and he orders Order 66 to enact. Now, Order 66 is this little microchip inside of the stormtrooper's brain, and when he says it, all of a sudden they think that the Jedi are the bad guys, and they turn on the Jedi and they try to kill them. Now, the Bad Batch are these clone troopers that have been genetically altered, and they're not really affected by this Order 66, except for Crosshair, which we learn about in episode 9. He's affected, and then the other guys slowly start to get affected until they do the little surgery and they get the little chip removed, and now they're fine. So episode 10, which is the episode that came out today, they get called on a mission to go save this separatist guy, this separatist leader who is just trying to protect his people. But now the Republic is in charge. Now the Republic has moved in, and they're like, hey, you're going to follow us or all you're going to die. And he's supposed to get in front of his people and say, all right, so listen, we just fall in line and everything's going to be fine. But he realizes that this is all a lie, that there's no way that this is going to be good, even though, you know, they're in this weird teetering time of supposed peace. This all comes back from Anakin sitting down talking with Padme years ago when they were kids, saying, why can't we just all be in peace? Why can't, why do we have to fight all the time? And she was like, well, different people have different ambitions and different things that are important to them. And he's like, no, there needs to be like one set of rules and one person telling them. And she's like, who do you think that's going to be? You? And he goes, maybe. Well, here we are. Here we are. So the Bad Batch get called in to save this senator, and they move in and they're not happy about it, but they sort of quickly realize that this guy's just trying to protect his people. And they sort of realize the fact that, we don't want to kill our brothers, these other stormtroopers, because they're all basically people, even though they're clones, they're people. And so they're not trying to kill the clones. They're using stun guns and stuff like that to try and get their way out. Meanwhile, the other stormtroopers are trying to kill them. But the Bad Batch is special, so they're making it through. And we see in this episode that they get separated by Omega. They realize they're going into harm's way, and that there's two different bounty hunters trying to capture her. You got Cad Bane and Fennec Shand that they think are trying to capture her. So they're like, it's better if you just stay here. Sid will protect you. And while she's hanging out with Sid learns that she's really smart and that she's good at games. And so Sid, being the savvy businesswoman that she is, puts the kid to work. And you see at the end of the episode that she's won a bunch of money. Like, she's helped pay off all of their debts, and she's been useful. The episode ends with Hunter coming back in, the group of the clones, and he comes back in and he says, my goal was for you to lie low, and thank you for doing this, but she's like, I just want to be useful, and this is the way I could be useful. And he says, I tell you what, he said, we'll play one more game, and if you beat me, I'll never leave you behind on a mission again. And he's supposed to be the most cunning of the group, and I can only predict that she ends up winning because she's really, really smart. She has an interesting mind for strategy. Now, in the last episode, I didn't even talk about episode 9 really, but in the last episode, we learn that Omega is genetically unaltered from Jango Fett. Boba Fett was created as the first unchanged DNA match to Jango Fett. Whenever we're watching the prequels, Ewan McGregor comes to check out the place as Obi-Wan Kenobi, and the Caminos tell him, Jango was a supreme DNA, and we decided to use his DNA to create the clones, and they turned out to be excellent troops. And his only request is that he was allowed one genetically matched DNA being that was not altered. And we meet Boba as a little kid. Now, Boba Fett grows up to be the bounty hunter that we all know and love. Obviously, you can see him behind me on my picture. But Omega was created later. Same genetic match, but this time it's a female. Okay. So in episode 9, we learned that they originally called Boba Alpha. So you got Alpha and Omega, which means that she's the last one that they've created. They created Alpha, Boba, and a bunch of clones, and then she's Omega. She's the last of it. She's the last real genetic DNA match. So she's important to the Caminos, because if they can get her back, they can then make more and better and whatever, stormtroopers or whatever you want to call it, soldiers. But she is special. And we're going to learn more about that as the show goes on. I'm not sure how many episodes this thing has, but we're 10 in so far, and I'm enjoying the crap out of it. It's really great. If you're a Star Wars fan, I'm sure you're probably enjoying it too. So anyway, good episode. they save the guy. He lives to fight another day. They realize that even though they're against this thing, that this is really the right move. Um, I had talked in the past about how I was confused about who Tech was versus Echo. So I take it all back. I went back and I watched the last season of the Clone Wars on the animated series on Disney Plus, and I was watching it with my grandson because he and I spent the day together, um, and we went back and watched it together because I was like, "Hey, you need to check this out." And I was kind of showing him some stuff with Ahsoka and how she developed into being just super powerful and really holding her own. And I watched the episode where they go back and they're able to free Echo from being manipulated and having all of the plugs in his head and him wired up to basically like the machine from the Matrix, where they're tapping into his brain and learning about strategy and learning about ways that they can fight the clones. And this was the separatists that had him as a prisoner at the time. So watching all of that and seeing you in that episode, you also see Anakin start to turn because he kills this guy when, as a Jedi, he's not really supposed to, but he kills this guy because he's so angry. And it's not but like a few episodes later that he fully turns into Darth Vader. So it's a really interesting episode, but it also let me know that Tech is the person with the arm that has the screwdriver thing, kind of like R2D2, where he can plug into machines and download maps and download all kind of stuff into his brain. He's got like this computer thing in his brain now. He's part machine. He's more machine than he is man, honestly. So it's crazy that he's in this, and I had kind of misplaced who he was supposed to be, but I get it now. Like rewatching that kind of helped me remember who Echo was. So good episode. Let me switch gears again. Let's talk about Loki. Okay, Loki came out with the latest episode. It's really interesting. There's a huge battle scene in the last episode with Sylvie and Loki fighting the TVA, the Time Variance Authority. If you haven't watched this, skip past this part. If you have watched it, listen to it. You're going to enjoy it. Okay, so they're fighting against the TVA. Loki hits a little thing on her programmer. They end up on a planet that's going to be destroyed, and it's supposed to be their moment to have a time to bond. And not only do they bond, but Loki sort of falls for her. And in this episode, in the latest episode, they're literally watching the planet crumble around them, and they get to talk openly about all of their hopes and dreams and fears and what they're up against and how they were moved. And you see an opening scene where you realize that Sylvie was living on Asgard as a Loki whenever the time variance came and got her, and was going to take her to be processed. And she fought back and she escaped. And she escaped from whatever that woman's called, Ramona. She escaped from Ramona's care and has been on the run ever since. And because of that, that's why she's up against the TVA. That's why she wants to find out what's going on and to destroy them ultimately, because she was like, I was a kid, I had a family. What did I break? What Nexus event did I create as a kid? And you learn that all of this happens to everybody within the TVA. And it's like, all right, well, who's in control of the TVA? Is it these three time lords, these time beings, these lizard looking people? And so in this episode, they are talking to each other, Loki and Sylvie, and they fall for each other. Like they fall in love, and they're from different dimensions. So it really creates a weird trigger point for the TVA, and they notice it right away. Mobius is like, is this the event? Is this the thing that's going on? We got to figure this out. We got to go into it. And so they follow up on it, and they get to the world right before it's destroyed, right before Loki and Sylvie are both like, well, I guess this is it. Like the planet is, there's asteroids breaking into the planet, and parts of this moon are breaking into this planet. And just before it's wiped out, they get pulled into the TVA. So now they're under custody. Look like they're in prison. They get sent to different rooms. They're being talked to. There's a really funny deal where Loki, as part of his punishment, gets put into a special prison where you get to see the actor Jamie Alexander. She plays Sig, and Sig comes in and he's replaying this event over and over and over again, where she's mad that he has cut her hair. And whenever she comes into the scene, she starts telling him how how a miserable piece of crap he is, and that he's always going to be alone because he's so awful. And every time she enters a scene, she beats him up. and she just berates him about how petty and awful and terrible he is, and how he's going to die alone, that no one ever wants to be with him because he's so awful. And this just plays over and over and over and over and over like a punishment. And he sort of taps into Mobius's ideas, and is honest with him and says, listen, I know Sylvie's power, and she tapped into an agent's mind and figured out that everybody here is variants. Nobody is TVA didn't create you. This is all a lie. And Mobius and him go back and forth over what's a lie and what's the truth. And just before Loki is put back in this thing, he tells him, he says, the only lie here is the lie you tell yourself. And so Mobius, being the curious mind that he is, he looks into it. And at a certain point, he realizes, oh, this is real. He steals Ramona's little data pad thing, and he watches a video of her interrogating this agent who supposedly had her mind manipulated. And he sees her telling her, I had a life before this. This isn't real. None of this is real. We've all been lied to. This is all fake. And so he looks into it. He decides to free Loki to figure out what's going on. He's trying to figure out what to do. And meanwhile, the TVA finds out, and they're after him. One of the agents, one of the security force, she had her mind manipulated by Sylvie, and when she did, it let her see memories of herself. It let her see her with a family, and she goes into the detention center and she gets Sylvie and she says, "What did you show me? Explain to me what you showed me." And she tells her, she's like, "You had a life before this. You had a family." And the agent, the security officer says, "I looked happy." And you could tell that she hadn't been happy ever. But she's like, "In this memory, I'm happy. What does it mean? Can you show me?" And so she's like, "Sure." So Sylvie touches her arm and lets her see herself in this other life, lets her see more of this version of who she was. So she agrees to help her. She's like, "What do we do now?" She's like, "I got an idea." So Ramona takes Loki and Sylvie to meet the timekeepers to supposedly get pruned, which is what they call being vaporized or deleted or whatever it is. And so they get in this room with all this smoke, and it looks like to me, my first thought was Wizard of Oz. This is the big Meet the Oz moment where, oh no, all bow before the great and all powerful Oz. And I was like, I don't know, man. Something ain't right. Like immediately I thought that. And so they meet with the TVA, and the three lizard people are like, you have broken the laws of blah 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 blah. You shall be deleted. And they sort of, at a moment, the security guy breaks in, the security lady breaks in. She helps them sort of fight. Um, just before this, Mobius is deleted, so we don't know what happened there. Ramona fights with them. There's a huge battle scene, and Loki and Sylvie prevail. And Sylvie basically goes up to one of the lizard people things and chops its head off with a staff. And we see the head roll on the ground, and it's not real. It's an android. And they are both looking at each other like, are you kidding me? Like, this isn't even the thing. Who is in charge of all this? How is this a thing? And so they're left with question marks of what is going on, really. And as soon as they're asking that question, really trying to figure it out between the two of them, Ramona comes up behind Loki and deletes him. She prunes him. She vaporizes him. He disappears. And the show's called Loki. So my first thought is, oh crap, what did they just do to the main character? So the main character is vaporized, and you go, okay, so what now? What do we do now? And the credits start. So I'm left looking at the screen like, I can't believe what I just saw. But also I go, okay, in this universe that we're watching, the TVA has the ability to travel through time. So there's going to be some time loop where they can rescue this or change the timeline in some way. Something's going to happen where Loki's fine. But I'm like, I don't know. I don't know how they're going to do this. I love the writing in this. To me, this is a lot of creative writing. To me, this is probably the result of a lot of people sitting around smoking dope, being like, "What if we do this, man?" Sort of that kind of thing. That's what I envision. A lot of people just sitting around going, "That sounds crazy. What if? Hey, what if we also do this?" I mean, that's how I would be even without drugs. So, um, yeah, the credits roll, and as soon as the picture credits stop, there is that Marvel moment where there's like an end scene, and you get to see Loki face down, waking up and groggy and going, Am I in hell? What is this?" And when he turns over, there's three beings there that say, "It's gonna be if you don't get up." And when he turns over and looks, there's three beings there that look like weird versions of maybe him. Like there's this old guy in this funky looking costume from, like, I don't know, looks like the cartoons from maybe the 60s or something, with these crazy giant horns, and he's a really 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 old guy, and it looks like a midget sitting there with, am I supposed to say midget, a tiny person sitting there, a little person sitting there, um holding some kind of sword maybe, and then this giant black dude in the back that maybe looks like a black Thor. I don't know, he looks like he has a giant hammer, but they only show it for like a second, and then you're like, it happens so quickly. You're like, what did I just see? I had to rewind it and hit it again, and rewind it, hit it again, rewind it, hit it again. I was like, I can't even tell what I'm looking at. This is crazy. So anyway, um, I love the writing. I love the story. I love the progression of the characters. I love the interactions between Loki and Sylvie, where she's supposed to be him from a different universe. And if these three other beings are supposed to be versions of him as well, then that's just going to be a crazy storyline. And I'm excited for it. I like the chaos of this. This is a lot of fun. If Loki's supposed to be the god of mischief, hey, this is a lot of fun mischief. And I'm a fan. So hats off to everybody at Marvel, Disney, whoever's doing all this. This is all fantastic. Okay. Now, let me switch gears one more time. I want to talk about this show, Solo. Okay. Or Solos. I think it's Solos. It's on Amazon Prime. Um, it's got several episodes with basically one character, one actor. And I could see this being a very interesting thing that came about because of coronavirus, because of what we talked about before with trying to make content where you can't have a lot of people in the same room, or you have to socially distance people, or you have to live within a bubble. The first episode, okay, this is just kind of a prequel. I'm letting you know ahead of time. I'm spoiling it if you're watching it. I've only seen 3 episodes, but the first episode is Anne Hathaway, and she's living in her mom's basement, and she's a scientist, and she's trying to figure out time travel. And there's a very interesting story there where she's trying to communicate with her future self to see if she can find a cure for her mom's cancer. And there's a crazy interaction between her future self and her past self. And each of these episodes are about 30 minutes long. And it's brilliant. It's really brilliant. Um, so far, I'm 3 episodes in, and every episode makes me want to cry a little bit. Episode 2 is with Anthony Mackie. He he's supposedly a rich business guy who has spent a lot of time in his life trying to make his business profitable, and has. And he is opening scenes talking with himself. There's a him and him, and they're talking to each other. And quickly you realize that him on the couch is an android version of him, a robot version of him, because he's dying. He apparently has something that he only has like so many months to live. And so he's paid money for this replica version of him, Tom, to come in and be him. And they have a short period of time where he has to tell him all the stuff that is important. And the Android version already knows all the stuff about the business, but he's like, tell me about your family. And so he has to learn about his wife really quickly, and he has to learn about all of the little things that make their relationship special. And he has to learn about the kids and all of the things that he needs to know to take care of the kids the right way, and all the reasons that he loves the kids. And it's it's beautiful. It's a beautiful episode. Um, episode 3 is Helen Mirren, who at this is her character. Her name is Peg, and at 71 years old, she is on a solo mission in outer space. And she's talking to this robot voice on a console about her life and about why she chose this mission and why she's doing this. And she talks about the things that she remembers, the things that made life great, and the things that she regrets, and all of the things. And it's very reflective of life. There's good writing in this, there's good acting in this. Like I said, I'm 3 episodes in so far. Each episode has a different actor playing a different role. And I think in each one of the episodes, it's basically a version of them talking about them in a different way or a different interaction with themselves. And it's brilliant. It's really brilliant. So this week, all thumbs up with everything I've watched and listened to. Good stuff. I highly recommend you checking it out. Whatever you're into, go for it. Like, learn, enjoy, be a part of it, spend time with friends and family, spend time doing the thing you're passionate about. If you have something that you just can't do without doing, do it. Like this podcast. It'd be easy for me to go, I don't have time. I have this to do and that to do. And today's one of those days, but I haven't done one in a week. And the way my stupid wiring is in my brain, I got to get this done. I got to get this out of me. I got to get this out of me so that I can take in more stuff. I want to be a sponge. I want to be able to absorb the things around me and learn from it and learn lessons from it and be able to use those lessons to help other people. And the only way I can help other people is if I get this out of me to you guys. So, as much as for some of you, this is what you want to listen to, for me, it's the thing I have to do. I have to get it out. And if you're wired like me, then you have to do the same thing. And I get it. I totally get it. Kindred spirits. So, with that, I'm going to wrap this up. Wish you guys a happy 4th and enjoy the fireworks. Be careful, especially if you're drinking. Don't drink and drive. But if you're having a good time, hey, have a good time. Don't forget to hydrate. If you got to switch between having a drink and having some water, do that. And hopefully we can get together and do this after the holiday. Okay? Y'all be good to one another. Thank you for listening. Please, if you enjoyed this, remember to rate, review, subscribe, share this with your friends. Reach out to me on the podcast. You can reach me on www.stuffiheard.com. You can also send all your complaints to 5and40@gmail.com. Greg Steele will be happy to answer all your complaints, especially if you encrypt some cryptocurrency to him. You'll move to the top of the list. He'll get right on that. He always enjoys when I put that in there. All right. Thank you, everybody. And as always, I end this by saying, cue the cow. So I want my legs. Give me